After the Second World War, Indonesian nationalists proclaimed an independent Indonesia, and what followed was a bloody colonial war. But what actually happened to Suriname? Because Suriname got its independence in 1975, and there was no Surinamese War of Independence. So how did this process go? That is what you will learn in this video. In this video, you're going to learn how Suriname gained its independence from the Netherlands. Suriname was for centuries under Dutch rule, and by the turn of the 20th century a melting pot of different people. There were the Creoles and the Marans, those with African roots, as well as Javanese, Hindustani and Chinese that came to Suriname as contract laborers after slavery was abolished, and of course the indigenous population that formed a small portion of the entire population. During the Second World War as a whole, Suriname behaved loyal towards the Dutch government in exile. The Dutch administration decreased, and coupled to economic growth, nationalist feelings among the educated population grew. People from this class were closely related to Dutch cultural identity. They strived for more autonomy after the war. During the war, in 1943, the Unie Suriname was founded, established for all population groups but in reality dominated by the Creoles. After World War II, Surinamese political parties emerged. In 1946 there was the Muslim Partij, the MP, by a Hindustani notary clerk, Asghar Keramat Ali. Their goal was to counterbalance the Creole role at the negotiations with the Dutch about the transition towards autonomy. Several months later, the Progressieve Surinaamse Volkspartij, the PSV, was founded, as well as the Nationale Partij Suriname, the NPS. Other parties were founded in the years after World War II. Most of these parties were not illogical, but aimed to provide a power base for one's own religious or ethnic group. Due to limited suffrage, the Creole Protestant dominated the so-called states, till 1937 named the colonial states. Surinamese requests for a round-table conference were postponed, and this was mostly due to the fact that the Dutch were focusing their attention to the east, talking about Indonesia, where the Indonesian War of Independence was fought. But in 1948, the first round-table conference was held. Also, representatives of the Dutch Antilles took part in negotiations. There were two main topics to be discussed. One was suffrage, the other autonomy. Regarding suffrage, the Dutch decided that the states of Suriname had to determine this, and this resulted in an electoral system that was beneficial for the Creoles, and it was left unchanged till 1963. As for autonomy, there was more friction, because the representatives of the Surinamese delegation demanded more autonomy than the Dutch were willing to give. Eventually, the Dutch gave in and complied to most of the Surinamese demands. In 1954, this led to the Statute of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. It was decided that Suriname became a constituent country within the Kingdom of the Netherlands. It gave Suriname autonomy, while the Dutch government managed defense, foreign relations, international trade agreements, guaranteeing human rights and legal certainty. Nowhere in the statute was the right for self-determination, in other words independence, laid down. But Dutch financial aid made up for a lot. In other words, the Dutch bought power over Suriname and the Dutch Antilles. For a while, the question of independence did not receive much attention. It was mostly advocated by the Creole elite, since they had higher positions in the Surinamese society and they encountered the limitations of their power. As for Javanese and Hindustani, there was not much enthusiasm for a possible independence because they feared Creole dominance. Demands for independence did not come from Suriname itself, but from Surinamese in the Netherlands in the early 1950s. In July 1951, the cultural association Wie Egithani, meaning our own case, was born, led by Eddie Bruma. They were inspired by Anton de Kom, an anti-colonial activist that was exiled to the Netherlands, joined the resistance in the Second World War and died in a German concentration camp. In 1959, the Partij van de Nationalistische Republiek, the PNR, was founded. This party strived for independence on the 1st of July 1963, exactly 1 century after the Dutch abolition of slavery. As a reaction, the earlier mentioned Creole party NPS advocated more nationalism as well. Where the Creoles became polarized, more distance was created between them and the Hindustani and Javanese that feared Creole dominance after independence. Tensions rose in 1962 as in neighboring British Guyana, race riots broke out, but these did not spill over to Suriname. During the 1973 election campaigns, the idea of independence was brought up again. NPS and government leader Henck Arron said he would strive for independence. The year would be 1975. As early as January 1972, the Dutch Biesheuvel cabinet had set up a Kingdom Commission to consider new relations between the three parts of the country. Consideration was given to further independence for Suriname and the Antilles. After the Arron government's statement, the position of the Kingdom Commission changed. A timetable was drawn up for Surinamese to achieve independence.
Deze conferentie is het startpunt van een reeks van regelingen die nodig zijn om het verlangen van Suriname te verwezenlijken eind volgend jaar onafhankelijk te zijn. En ik hoop dat deze conferentie daaraan zal bijdragen.
We kunnen niet binnen een jaar onafhankelijkheid nemen, want de Suriname is nog niet zo ontwikkeld om in 1975 onafhankelijk te nemen.
This also had to do with the ongoing migration waves of Surinamese to the Netherlands. In 1970, 70,000 Surinamese left for the Netherlands, and in the year after that, already 10,000. It is precisely the migration that prompted the Dutch government to make haste with the independence of the country. Negotiations were started between the governments of Suriname and the Netherlands on, among other things, defense, aviation, development, cooperation, and the nationality of residents. In June 1975, those negotiations were successfully concluded. It was determined that Surinamese debt would expire and that 3 billion Dutch guilder in development aid would be available for the next 10 to 15 years, in addition to previously pledged funds. Surinamese who stayed in the Netherlands on the day of independence would retain their Dutch citizenship unless they themselves opted for Surinamese. After independence, a stay of 3 months was possible without a visa requirement. For longer stays, work, study, or family reunification, a visa requirement would apply. Shortly after the decision in the Dutch parliament, the states of Suriname adopted a constitution. Independence became a fact on November 25, 1975. Crown Princess Beatrix and Prince Claus and the Prime Minister Den Uyl were present at the ceremonies in Paramaribo. Suriname's first president became the last governor, Dr. Johan Verrier. After independence, more Surinamese came to the Netherlands. A total of 300,000 came to the Netherlands in the 1970s. Their reception was anything but warm, literally and figuratively. The climate was cold, the reception as well. When a conflict broke out in February 1980 between the Arron government and professional soldiers over the formation of a union, the army seized power. A national military council was set up under the leadership of Desi Bouterse. Although a civilian government was formed by Shin A-sen in March, the role of the parliament was limited by an enabling act. On December 8, 1982, 15 prominent opposition figures were murdered. This was known as the December murders. The deteriorating economy and the internal military struggle eventually led to the return of civilian rule in 1987. It was not until 1991 that development aid from the Netherlands was resumed. Since 1991, development aid to Suriname has regularly been discontinued due to political developments there. I hope you find this video interesting. If you want to learn about the rise and fall of the Dutch Empire, it's an overview video about the Dutch colonial history, click here. Thank you so much for watching and best wishes from Paramaribo, Suriname.